Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Music Basics video. So today we're going to be talking about the musical alphabet. So there's a couple of musical terms that we really need to come to grips with. And the first one is the difference between a note and a pitch. Now, most people think of these words as being synonymous, meaning they mean the same thing, but in reality they're two separate items, but they're very much linked. A pitch is the physical thing that you hear. If I was to have an A, for example, it could be measured in Hertz, and so, for example, A below middle C just happens to be 440 Hertz. And then the octave lower A would be 220, and so on and so forth, because that's how the rule of octaves work, is it goes up by double every single time. Now, this might seem overly mathematical, and you're right. So unless you're dealing with equalization in recording or you're tuning a piano, you don't necessarily need to worry too much about which frequency a note is, but we do have to give that sound or pitch a name. And that's where the naming convention comes in music. The musical alphabet is made up of 7 letters, and it just so happens to be the first 7 letters of the regular alphabet. So it would be A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Once you get to G, the next letter above it is going to be A again. And if you were to go backwards, say C, B, A, the letter below that is going to be G. There's a lot of things in music, and we call it cyclical, meaning it's a cycle. It just keeps going around and around, and the alphabet is another one of those. This means that if we take an instrument like a piano, the fingering set on the piano repeats several times as it goes up the keyboard and down because the note names repeat themselves. This is why a pitch and a note are two different things, because the notes are all the same all the time. A C is a C, but which C on the piano it is going to dictate which pitch we're talking about. So a higher note on the piano is going to be a larger frequency, aka a higher pitch, and a lower note on the piano is going to be a smaller frequency and a lower pitch, but again, it's still going to be called by the same name. So now that I have a blank staff open, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some notes, and I'm going to be using the lines to help me figure out which note goes on what line. So the first thing I'm going to do is utilize my clef here, which is the treble clef. The treble clef indicates to me where the note G will be, and specifically the G above middle C. So if I was to go into this measure here and add a whole note on the note G, you'll see that it put a note head on this line. And I've gone ahead and I've turned on this setting here where it's going to put the letter name in the middle of the note, just so we know what we're talking about. So you can see here that because this note sits right on the line, centered in between the two spaces, that means that it is a line note. And in this case, it happens to be G. Again, that's defined by our clef. The nice thing about note names is they just follow the alphabet, and they climb up and down the staff as if it was a ladder, for example. So if I was to take this note and turn it into a smaller note value, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding in the notes around it. So when I go from this G, which is on the line, to the space above it, that will become an A. When I go up to the next note above that, it will become a B, then a C, then a D, then an E, then an F, and finally we'll make it to what we call the octave, which is where the alphabet starts over again. So you can see I have the entire alphabet, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then we're back to G again. Now, fortunately, this system works exactly the same if we were to go down. And so if I was to add the same notes but going the opposite direction, you will see that they will get labeled in the alphabetical order, but this time they're gonna be backwards. And then we would get here. So you can see that when I go from a line down to a space, I'm going backwards in the alphabet. when I go from a line up to a space, I'm going up the alphabet. And so this system is very, very uniform. You can also see if I run out of lines going up or down, I can just draw them in, which are called ledger lines. Ledger lines work just like the regular lines and spaces of our stave, but they're just extra ones that we've drawn on. So this low G here is going to require 2 ledger lines, and then the note will be below it because that's where it falls in the alphabet. Now, fortunately, this system works exactly the same in bass clef. So if I was to go down here in bass clef and I was to start a note on an F, which in this case is the line that is in between the 2 dots of the bass clef, and that indicates where F below middle C is, I can do the exact same thing where the note names are going to go up and down as I move through the stave. And so again, you can see, just like in the treble clef, as I go up the stave, you'll see that as I go from space to line and line to space, we're going up the alphabet, aka forward. And as I go down, I'm going down the alphabet. Now, the biggest difference here between the bass clef and the treble clef is, as you can see, anything that would be on this top space in the bass clef is a G, but in the treble clef, it's an E. And that's because the bass clef defines this line as F, and the treble clef defines this line as a G. So that means when we start counting our alphabet, we have to start where the clef tells us to. Also, if I was to click on these 2 notes here, you'll see that down here on my keyboard, you'll see that it highlights the note on the piano that represents the note we're talking about. So you can see that this A is the A above middle C, which happens to be C4. And you'll see that it takes up that key. Now the G below it happens to be the key right next to it. On a piano, the white notes on the piano represent the notes without accidentals. It's just the letter name, G, A, B, C, just like that. And you can see if I go here to these 2 notes, you'll see that the upper D is way up here, and then here is that C that's below the staff, which happens to be middle C. Now you can see that as I go up the keyboard, you can see there's another C that's an octave away, and it showcases the pattern that exists on the keyboard. So you can see that this C here is next to 2 black keys, and the pattern is the same up here. It's also the same down here at C3. So if I was to look at this note, you'll see there's a C and 2 black keys, 2 white keys, and then 3 more black keys. And that's how we can tell we've gone from one set of the musical alphabet to the next set, aka moving by an octave. The same is true down here in the bass clef. You can see this note right here happens to be C4, which is middle C. And we call it middle C because it's right in the middle between these 2 clefs. So C below treble clef is 1 line below. C above bass clef is 1 line above, and they are the same key on the piano, aka the same pitch, and we call it middle C. The B below that note happens to be the key next to it. There's the A, the G, and the F. And if we were to do the same thing in the treble clef, we can see there's our G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G way over there on the right side of our screen. So the piano is a really helpful tool when it comes to learning note names because you can visually see all of the notes as they go up and down, and it gives us a representation of what an octave is, aka it's the next set of keys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. If you're enjoying these series, please like and subscribe. It really helps out allowing more people to find these videos. And if you're interested in more information on music and music in general, you can visit my website at larsonjazz.com. Or if you're interested in studying music formally, you can visit me at Spokane Falls Community College. Thanks so much for watching.